Leaving the quiet church behind, we continue along a narrow stone lane that gently curves toward the edge of the village. The evening light grows softer with every step, casting long golden shadows across the ancient cobblestones. Wild grass has slowly claimed the path, growing between the carefully placed stones that once echoed with the sound of busy footsteps. Ahead, standing slightly apart from the neighboring cottages, is a sturdy stone building with a tall chimney rising above its roof. Though silent now, it was once one of the busiest places in the entire village. This was the blacksmith's workshop. Unlike the family cottages we have already explored, this building was never meant for quiet conversations or evening meals. It was a place of steady work, glowing fire, and skilled hands. Every morning, before the village fully awoke, the blacksmith would open the heavy wooden doors, stir the coals inside the great stone forge, and prepare for another day of shaping iron into the tools that kept the community alive. The large oak doors remain slightly open, inviting us inside. As we step across the worn threshold, the air feels cooler than expected. The scent of old timber and weathered stone lingers quietly, mixed with the faint memory of charcoal that disappeared centuries ago. Sunlight slips through narrow gaps in the wooden walls, illuminating thousands of tiny dust particles that drift peacefully through the still air. The workshop itself remains remarkably complete. Against one wall stands a massive iron anvil, its smooth surface polished by countless years of careful work. Beside it rests a heavy wooden workbench, scattered with handmade hammers, tongs, chisels, and small metal punches. Every tool has its place, arranged with the quiet discipline of someone who expected to return the following morning. Near the center of the room sits the great stone forge. Its fire has long since faded into cool gray ash, yet the shape of the hearth remains perfectly intact. Large leather bellows still hang beside it, their wooden handles worn smooth by years of steady hands. It is easy to imagine the steady rhythm that once filled this room. The crackle of burning charcoal, the ringing sound of iron meeting iron, the gentle conversation of villagers waiting patiently for repaired tools or freshly forged horseshoes. The blacksmith was far more than a craftsman. In villages like this, every family depended upon his work. Farmers needed plows sharpened before spring planting. Carpenters relied on sturdy nails and strong hinges. Shepherds required iron fittings for gates and simple tools for repairing fences. Even the smallest kitchen knife eventually found its way onto this workbench. The blacksmith quietly touched every part of village life without ever leaving his humble workshop. Looking closer, we notice something unusual resting upon the wooden bench. A horseshoe lies half-finished beside a small hammer. The iron was shaped with remarkable skill, yet one final strike was never made. Nearby, a simple iron hinge remains clamped in place, waiting for work that somehow never continued. Nothing appears damaged. Nothing suggests haste or panic. Instead, the workshop feels paused between one ordinary task and the next. Outside, the gentle wind slips through the open doorway, carrying the soft rustle of leaves from the surrounding oak trees. The peaceful silence that fills the workshop is not empty. It seems to preserve the quiet memory of honest labor, reminding us that generations of ordinary people built their lives one careful day at a time. As the fading sunlight reaches across the stone floor, it becomes impossible not to wonder about the final morning here. Did the blacksmith light the forge as he always had? Did a familiar neighbor stop by to collect a repaired tool? Or did something quietly interrupt the peaceful rhythm of the village before another ordinary day could begin? The unfinished horseshoe remains exactly where it was left, waiting patiently through centuries of silence. It asks no questions, yet somehow it tells one of the village's greatest mysteries. Whatever happened here did not erase the lives these people built. It simply stopped them, leaving behind workshops, cottages, and memories that still wait for someone willing to walk slowly enough to notice them. As we leave the blacksmith's workshop behind, the narrow stone lane continues toward a small building standing quietly beneath two ancient oak trees. It is smaller than the church and simpler than the family cottages, yet its importance to the village was once beyond measure. Time has weathered its wooden walls and softened the edges of its stone foundation, but the structure still stands with quiet dignity. Above the entrance hangs a faded wooden sign, its carved letters nearly erased by centuries of wind and rain. This was the village school, a place where generations of children took their very first steps into learning. The wooden door opens with only the gentlest movement. Inside, the room is filled with peaceful stillness. Sunlight filters through narrow windows, sending warm beams across rows of small wooden benches that remain exactly where they were carefully placed long ago. Dust drifts lazily through the quiet air, moving so slowly that it almost seems suspended in time. Nothing here feels abandoned in the ordinary sense. Instead, it feels as though the children have simply stepped outside for a short afternoon break. At the front of the room stands a sturdy oak desk where the village teacher once greeted every child each morning. Upon its surface rests a small stack of handwritten parchment, neatly arranged beside a feather quill and a tiny glass bottle that once held dark ink. The ink has long since dried, yet every object remains untouched, patiently waiting for hands that never returned. Along one wall hangs a faded cloth map, showing the nearby forests, rivers, and farming fields surrounding the village. It is simple and carefully drawn, reminding us that education here was closely connected to everyday life. Children learned to measure the changing seasons, recognize useful herbs, count harvests, and understand the stars that guided travelers during clear nights. Their lessons were practical, preparing them to become farmers, craftsmen, healers, and caretakers of the community they loved. Small wooden slates still rest upon several benches. Some carry faint chalk marks that have survived the passing centuries. Simple letters, basic numbers, the careful handwriting of young students taking their first lessons. One slate shows only a single unfinished word, its final letter never completed. It is such a small detail, yet somehow it carries extraordinary emotion. A child's lesson remained unfinished, not because of failure, but because life itself quietly paused. Near the back of the classroom stands a narrow bookshelf built from rough oak planks. Inside are several carefully copied manuscripts bound in worn leather. They contain collections of prayers, seasonal calendars, simple arithmetic, and stories passed from one generation to the next. In villages like this, books were precious treasures. Every page represented countless hours of careful writing by hand. The teacher likely protected them with great care, sharing them only during lessons before returning each volume safely to its place. Outside the open window, the gentle breeze carries the soft sound of leaves moving high above the village. Wildflowers now grow freely beneath the windows, where children once gathered before class. It is easy to imagine their quiet excitement each morning. Some would have hurried along these very paths, carrying simple lunches wrapped in linen cloth. Others may have arrived early just to spend a few extra moments with friends before the day's lessons began. Education in a medieval village was never about wealth or ambition alone. It was about preserving knowledge, strengthening the community, and preparing the next generation for ordinary but meaningful lives. Every lesson taught within these walls helped shape the future of the village. Every child who learned to read a prayer, measure a field, or keep careful records carried that knowledge home to their family. As we slowly walk toward the doorway once more, one final detail catches our attention. Resting upon the teacher's desk is a small wooden whistle, beautifully carved with tiny leaves along its sides. Perhaps it was used to call the children together at the beginning of each lesson.
Or perhaps it belonged to a young student who accidentally left it behind one ordinary afternoon. Like every other object in this peaceful village, it remains exactly where it was placed, silently guarding a memory that time chose not to erase. Stepping back outside, the evening sky begins to glow with deeper shades of blue as the first stars quietly appear above the ancient rooftops. The school fades gently behind us, yet its quiet presence lingers in our thoughts. Long after the voices of its students disappeared, the building continues to tell a simple and beautiful story. It reminds us that every forgotten village was once filled with children who dreamed about tomorrow, never knowing that one day their home would become a mystery, remembered only through silence.
Beyond the village school, the narrow cobblestone path gently climbs toward a quiet hill overlooking the rooftops below. The evening breeze carries the soft scent of pine and wild herbs as golden sunlight slowly fades into the calm blue of approaching twilight. Standing alone at the top of the hill is the largest home in the village. It is not a castle nor a grand palace, but a well-built manor house of stone and heavy oak timber. Time has weathered its walls, yet its strength remains unmistakable. This was once the home of the village elder, a person trusted not because of wealth alone, but because of wisdom, experience, and a lifetime spent serving the community. The front door stands slightly open, moving only a little whenever the evening breeze passes through. Stepping inside, we find rooms larger than any we have explored before. Thick wooden beams support the high ceiling, while carefully crafted furniture fills the spacious hall. Despite the passing centuries, everything appears remarkably orderly. A long dining table rests beneath the windows, surrounded by carved wooden chairs polished smooth by generations of use. Shelves filled with handmade pottery, iron lanterns, and carefully woven baskets line the stone walls, each object resting exactly where it was last placed. Unlike the smaller cottages, this house contains a private study overlooking the village below. A wide oak desk faces the window, offering a peaceful view across the rooftops, the church tower, the village well, and the distant fields beyond. The elder must have spent countless evenings here, quietly watching over the people whose lives were closely connected to his own. Upon the desk rests something unlike anything we have discovered so far. A thick, leather-bound journal lies open beneath a layer of fine dust. Its pages have yellowed with age, yet the careful handwriting remains surprisingly clear. The ink has faded only slightly, preserving thoughts that were never meant to survive for centuries. The earliest entries speak of ordinary village life. There are notes about spring harvests, new families arriving from neighboring valleys, repairs made to the old bridge, and celebrations held after successful seasons. Every page reflects a community living in quiet harmony with nature. The elder writes not with grand words, but with simple observations that reveal deep affection for the people around him. As the pages continue, small changes begin to appear. The weather becomes increasingly unusual. Long periods of rain delay planting. Then, without warning, weeks of dry skies follow. The elder carefully records these changes without fear, believing that nature has always moved through seasons of uncertainty. Several pages later, another detail quietly emerges. A few families have decided to leave in search of more fertile farmland beyond the distant hills. There is no mention of panic or conflict. Instead, the elder writes with understanding, wishing them safe travels and hoping they will one day return. Near the final pages, the handwriting becomes slower and less certain. The entries grow shorter. One sentence simply reads, "The harvest grows smaller each passing year." Another says, "The children remain cheerful, though their parents worry quietly." There are no dramatic warnings, no stories of illness sweeping through the streets, no mention of war approaching the village, only the gentle record of a community slowly facing difficulties,
that many villages throughout history quietly endured. Resting beside the journal is a beautifully carved wooden seal used to approve important village records. Its smooth surface has been worn by decades of careful use. Nearby sits a pair of simple reading glasses, folded neatly beside an extinguished candle. Together, they create the feeling that the elder had merely stepped away for a short walk before returning to continue writing. Looking once more through the study window, the peaceful village below seems almost unchanged. The church still stands proudly. The cottages remain sheltered beneath ancient oak trees. Narrow stone paths continue winding gently between gardens now filled with wildflowers. Nothing about the landscape suggests sudden disaster. Instead, every corner quietly whispers the same unanswered question. If the village slowly declined over many years, why were so many homes left complete? Why were valuable tools, furniture, and personal belongings never taken away? And why did the elder's journal simply end without a final farewell or explanation? As twilight settles over the valley, we carefully close the journal exactly as we found it. Some stories reveal their endings all at once. Others ask us to keep walking patiently, allowing each quiet discovery to bring us a little closer to understanding. With one last glance toward the peaceful village below, we leave the manor house behind, carrying not answers, but a deeper appreciation for the ordinary lives that once filled this forgotten place with warmth, purpose, and hope.
As we leave the manor house behind, the evening has almost settled across the valley. A gentle mist begins to gather above the quiet fields, while the first stars appear one by one in the clear summer sky. Standing upon the hill, we pause for a final look across the peaceful village. The cottages remain untouched. The church still watches over the empty streets. The blacksmith's workshop rests in silence, and the little school waits patiently beneath the old oak trees. Everything seems strangely complete, yet entirely without life. For centuries, visitors have asked the same question: what truly happened here? The honest answer is both simple and surprisingly comforting. In many forgotten villages throughout medieval Europe, there was not always a single dramatic event that caused people to leave. More often, entire communities slowly faded away through a series of ordinary challenges that quietly unfolded over many years. One possible reason was the changing climate. Medieval farmers depended completely upon the rhythm of the seasons. A few years of poor harvests could be managed with careful planning, but repeated seasons of heavy rain, early frost, or long drought slowly weakened even the strongest communities. Crops became smaller, stored grain disappeared more quickly, and families eventually began searching for richer farmland beyond the distant hills. Another possibility was the gradual movement of trade. Centuries ago, small villages survived because nearby roads connected them to neighboring towns. Merchants passed through carrying cloth, salt, iron, grain, and news from distant regions. Yet roads often changed. New bridges were built elsewhere. Markets moved toward larger settlements. As trade slowly shifted away, quiet villages like this one became increasingly isolated. Fewer travelers arrived. Local craftsmen found fewer customers. Young families saw greater opportunities beyond the valley and quietly began new lives elsewhere. History also reminds us that disease did not always arrive as sudden catastrophe. Sometimes illness returned again and again over many generations, encouraging survivors to settle in healthier regions with cleaner water or more reliable farmland. Even without widespread tragedy, a village population could slowly decline until maintaining homes, fields, and public buildings became impossible. Nature itself may also have played a quiet role. Rivers gradually changed course, forests expanded into farmland. Valuable soil slowly lost its fertility after generations of continuous planting. None of these changes happened overnight. They unfolded so gradually that each generation likely believed the next would somehow restore what had been lost. Looking once more across the silent village, we notice something remarkable. The buildings were never burned. The church was never destroyed. Household belongings remained carefully arranged. These peaceful details suggest that many families may have left with hope rather than fear. They may have believed they would one day return after finding temporary work, better harvests, or safer opportunities elsewhere. Yet seasons became years, and years quietly became centuries. Archaeologists have discovered similar forgotten villages across Europe, where daily life simply came to an end without dramatic destruction. In many places, people carried only the possessions they truly needed for the long journey ahead, leaving behind furniture too heavy to transport, tools that could easily be replaced, and homes they hoped another generation might someday rebuild. There is something deeply human about that quiet decision. Imagine standing outside your own home one final evening. The familiar garden still blooms. The evening breeze still moves through the trees. The church bell still waits for Sunday morning. You lock the wooden door, believing your absence will be brief. Perhaps only one season. Perhaps only 1 year. Never imagining that no one from your family would ever walk that same path again. As darkness gently settles over the valley, the forgotten village no longer feels mysterious in the frightening sense. Instead, it feels profoundly familiar. Its silence reminds us that history is often shaped not only by kings, battles, or great disasters, but also by ordinary families making difficult choices in search of hope, security, and a better future. The quiet streets beneath the evening sky now seem less like abandoned ruins and more like a peaceful memory, carefully preserved by time itself. Every cottage, every pathway, and every weathered stone continues to tell the same gentle story. Life here was once ordinary, meaningful, and deeply loved. Though the villagers eventually walked away, the echoes of their kindness, hard work, and quiet dreams still remain, waiting patiently for anyone willing to slow down, listen carefully, and remember them once again. The night passes quietly over the forgotten village, and with the first gentle light of dawn, the valley slowly awakens once again. A thin layer of silver mist drifts above the fields, while the rooftops of the old cottages begin to glow beneath the soft morning sun. The village remains silent, just as it has for centuries, yet nature continues its endless rhythm without ever asking who once lived here. Every sunrise, every season, and every passing year has become another page in the story that time continues to write. As spring arrives, life returns in quiet and beautiful ways. Tiny wildflowers bloom between the ancient cobblestones, where villagers once hurried to begin their daily work. Fresh green leaves unfold upon the towering oak trees, casting gentle shadows across the empty lanes. Birds build their nests beneath weathered rooftops, singing cheerful songs that now echo through streets no human voice has filled for generations. Small streams carry fresh mountain water toward the nearby river, just as they always have, untouched by the passing centuries. Looking across the old gardens, it is easy to imagine where herbs, vegetables, and fruit trees once flourished under careful hands. Today, nature has transformed those orderly gardens into colorful meadows, filled with daisies, lavender, buttercups, and tall grasses that dance gently in the spring breeze. What was once carefully cultivated has slowly become wild again, yet its quiet beauty remains just as remarkable. As the weeks pass, summer settles peacefully across the valley. Warm sunlight bathes every stone wall and wooden cottage beneath clear blue skies. Bees wander lazily from flower to flower, while butterflies drift through the abandoned gardens. The air carries the gentle scent of fresh grass, pine trees, and warm earth. Standing in the center of the village during these quiet afternoons, one could almost believe that someone might soon step outside to greet a neighbor or hang freshly washed linen beneath the bright summer sun.
Yet no footsteps come. Only the wind moves softly between the cottages, carrying memories that no longer belong to anyone alive. When autumn arrives, the entire landscape changes once again. The ancient oak trees surrounding the village become glowing sheets of gold, amber, and deep crimson. Fallen leaves slowly cover the narrow pathways, hiding the worn cobblestones beneath a blanket of warm color. Each gentle breeze sends another handful of leaves drifting through the empty streets, creating a peaceful dance that repeats itself year after year without witness.
This may have been the villagers' favorite season. Autumn was the time of harvest, when families gathered grain, stored vegetables, collected apples, and prepared firewood for the coming winter. Laughter likely filled these streets as neighbors helped one another complete the final work before colder weather arrived. The village would have been alive with simple celebrations, thankful for another successful season shared together. Then winter quietly blankets everything beneath fresh snow. The rooftops disappear beneath soft white layers. Stone walls wear delicate patterns of frost. Smoke no longer rises from the chimneys, yet the village remains strangely beautiful beneath the pale winter sky. Animal tracks become the only footprints crossing the silent streets. Deer wander peacefully between the cottages. Foxes leave careful trails across the frozen gardens. Birds rest upon the church roof, while snowflakes fall gently through the still morning air. Winter has visited this forgotten village hundreds of times since the last family departed. Every year it covers the same rooftops, the same stone walls, and the same quiet pathways before giving way once again to spring. Nature never forgets its own seasons, even when people disappear. Standing here now, it becomes clear that the village has never truly been abandoned by the world itself. It has simply been adopted by nature. The forests protect it, the flowers decorate it. The rain gently washes its ancient stones, while sunlight continues to warm the walls each summer afternoon. Time has not destroyed the village. Instead, it has wrapped it in quiet patience, allowing every generation that discovers this place to witness a peaceful conversation between history and nature. As evening slowly returns once more, the first stars begin appearing above the valley exactly as they did centuries ago. Somewhere beneath those same stars, the villagers once paused after long days of honest work, grateful for another peaceful night together. Though their voices have faded into history, the changing seasons continue to honor their memory. Each spring flower, every autumn leaf, every winter snowfall, and every gentle summer breeze quietly reminds us that while people may leave, the land never forgets those who once called it home.